Maybe you could just start by just quickly introducing yourself.
Okay. My name is Beverley Jacobs. I'm Mohawk from Six Nations, Grand River Territory. My Mohawk name, Bear Clan name is Gowekuse.
Excellent. Okay. So thanks, Beverly, for being part of this. And I hope the questions weren't too hard or kind of difficult. But so the ones that I sent you, let's just start from the top. So what advice would you give someone going into a leadership position for the first time?
I think knowing what you're getting into, because it depends on the mandates of organizations and where you're headed, and how you are a leader within that organization, and understanding the principles, understanding your own principles and your own morals, and how far you're willing to go with an organization if they may not be the same. Right.
So really trying to connect your values with whoever you work with, kind of thing. Right. Mm-hmm. That's excellent. What do you do as a leader to empower or motivate the people around you?
I think one of the biggest things I do is by example.
Yeah.
Just the principles that I hold based on my traditional teachings and the knowledge that I carry is I use that on a daily basis and carry that with me, whether it's professionally or personally or within my family, And I think it's really important to carry those principles wherever you go, because it helps to have and to be able to build relationships with other people, and to acknowledge also other people who I think are all leaders.
Right. So that kind of segues nicely into a question that I have about how do you engage your cultural teachings while kind of living in like a 21st century, professional world.
All of those principles, the basic principles of, of peace, of having a good mind, of compassion and caring and sharing, and having that understanding of that unconditional love. Those are basic teachings within where I come from, being Haudenosaunee, mm-hmm. through our great law of peace, and the teachings and the principles of the strength of women, also within our culture, and living it.
Right.
Like I said earlier, is carrying those principles with me on a daily basis, and using them, and using those principles in life, in whether it's professionally or personally.
Right.
So, like for example, even one of the teachings is about making decisions in this lifetime that it has an impact 7 generations from now, and knowing my ancestors did that for me. So I take that very seriously, and so any decision that I make, anything I do, I think about and how that has an impact on 7 generations from now.
Wow. That's a lot of decision making.
Yes.
It's a lot of contemplation that would go into it. Did you intentionally go into leadership, or just something that kind of happened?
It just happened.
Just happened?
It wasn't something that I had planned on doing at all. I went to law school and did my graduate work in law, my master's degree in law, and just seems like things that had happened along the way, and the people that I met, and doing the work with Amnesty International with their Stolen Sisters report, and so then meeting families across the country, and it just kind of was the families that pushed me into that role, and friends, of course, and it wasn't anything I planned to do, but it was obviously something I was meant to do, and have learned many lessons from it.
Oh yeah?
Oh yeah.
And what's one of the biggest lessons that you've learned?
One of the biggest lessons I've learned is about responsibility and about accountability, and about how hard it is to be in that position. Especially when it comes to the responsibility and being at that level of politics.
Mm-hmm.
And because sitting at the tables with prime ministers and premiers and parliamentarians, basically, and sitting at those tables was actually the easy part, because I was able to carry, those messages and what I was supposed to do at those tables. I think one of the most difficult was with our own people was seeing, especially with our women, and having to hear from women on a daily basis who were suffering, or who had human rights violations, or who was looking for a lawyer, or who was trying to find a home, or who was kicked out of their homes. I'd hear that. So that was really difficult on a daily basis for 5 years, to hear that and to figure out how I can carry their voices and carry their messages at the other tables.
Right. Wow. That's a hard position to be in. I can't imagine.
Yeah, and then to continue to have relationships with the grassroots people, with the women and communities, and carrying that forward, because they would always say, I don't feel like I have a voice.
Right.
So carry my voice for me. And that was hard. That was hard to do.
So what are some of the skills or abilities that helped you, accomplish that goal?
I think one of the biggest skills that I've learned is having a voice. As Indigenous women, sometimes, and the impacts of colonization, being a survivor of violence, at one point I was totally silent and totally in a place where I didn't feel that I deserved to have a voice. And so it was mentors, it was along my travels along the way that I've learned from mentors, from women and men, who taught me about having a voice and not being afraid to use it. And also the skill of being able to learn from what had happened to me, and to use that as my fire,
right.
as something that continues to use that in when the voices need to be heard.
Right. And so, do you think that mentorship is a big part of becoming a leader, or
yes.
developing leadership potential?
Most definitely. I think mentorship is a definite requirement.
And did you search out mentors, or did they?
No, it was
happen?
just like along the way. I don't know, just the way I am. I always think about all of the positive. I think maybe that's part of my teachings, is about having a good mind, because it doesn't necessarily mean in your head. It means in that it's in your heart. You have a good heart, and your actions follow that. And I think part of that mentorship, and part of listening and going back to lessons that I've learned, and I've always listened to what people have told me, or what criticism even, maybe you should try to think about it in a different way, or maybe you should think about it this way, or maybe you can say it this way. So I've always been really open to strengthening, I guess, who I am, and listening to those voices that have helped me along the way.
I mean, it sounds like listening is a big one, because you, in your role as the president of the Women's Association, it sounds like you were listening to the people.
Oh yeah.
And hearing their voice forward.
Yeah, that was a big one for me. Is that listening.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think that's all my questions.
Wow.
I think we did it.
Cool.